All right. Well, hello, everyone. I just cannot express to you how happy I am that this conference has gone so well. I'm immensely proud to be just a part of this SORTEE community. It's full of lovely people. Now it's my pleasure to wrap up this virtual conference. And I first want to congratulate Ewan Young and Birgit Sabo as the winners of SORTEE's 2023 awards program. So Ewan is a third-year PhD student and Birgit is a postdoc, and they've both been putting their open science principles into practice with sharing data and metadata and code. This year, the awards committee implemented a lottery system, so all applicants who were deemed eligible for an award became finalists and then were entered into a random draw. Thanks a lot to everyone who applied. I've been told by the awards committee that they received outstanding applications and they hope to do more to promote open science practices next year. But before looking forward to next year, let's reflect back on the conference we've just had, a wonderful 24 hours with back-to-back discussions, hackathons, and workshops. Everyone, of course, has had a slightly different conference experience depending on when they were awake and which sessions they could attend. From my perspective here on Wurundjeri land, I stayed up much later than I usually do. I just couldn't pull myself away from this really interesting conversation that was happening around the value of pre-registration in ecology and evolution. And then I began my morning here with insights into barriers faced by non-native English speakers in science. In that session and also in 5 others, it's been fantastic to have American Sign Language interpreters, and that's thanks to support from the University of New Hampshire. But just in general, throughout this conference, I've been inspired by how many people have been engaging with this conference, both in the sessions and on Slack. We've all been reading these wonderful welcome messages that people have been posting on Slack, seeing where in the world people are and what they're working on, what they're interested in, what brought them to open science. So the word cloud on the screen is made from all those introductions. So one of my real takeaways from this conference is how many smiling faces I saw, how curious people were, how eager people were to help each other with their projects and share resources. But whether you've participated in conversations yourself at this conference or you were just happy to sit back and listen to other people's conversations, I hope that you've felt inspired by hearing people's perspectives on open and reliable, transparent science from all over the world. So just hastily this afternoon, I've been writing down what I saw as some of the main themes of the conference sessions that I was able to attend, but I'm sure you'll have other themes and we'll be thinking of more as we reflect on this conference in the days and weeks ahead. But the first thing I really noticed is if only I could convince my colleagues. Seems to be a very common experience for SORTEE members to become frustrated by the people that they're most often working with not sharing the same values when it comes to open science and doing more reliable research. So if nothing else, it's validating and encouraging to talk to other people who share a similar worldview. So SORTEE is providing a bit of a respite and motivation to continue to try and work in a way that better aligns with your values. But even more constructively, I also saw people sharing resources to counter common misconceptions that you hear about open science practices to help in those conversations with colleagues who are more reluctant to share their data or don't see value in pre-registration and so on. Another theme, best practices are hard and they're not often incentivized. So at this conference, we've seen workshops and hackathons to improve our skills in these things that are hard. And I think what these sessions highlighted is how it's even harder to do those things when you're by yourself, if you don't have support around you. There are so many resources online to learn whatever you want. It's all the information's already out there, but sometimes you just need someone to hold your hand and you need encouragement. For example, today, Kaya organized an unconference about learning how to write reproducible examples of your coding problem so that others can help you answer it. And in that session, she made this point that I loved about how important our emotions, our feelings are when we're approaching difficult problems. So I'll show you one of Kaya's slides that I liked. So here we have someone, they're a novice and they're stuck on this coding problem. So they seek help on the internet, but then they're asked to provide a reproducible example and they don't know how to do that. So they might just feel bad and give up, or else they try their best and then they're told, no, that's not good enough. That's not a reproducible example. Try again. And then they feel worse. And then they get stuck in this loop of frustration. So the people who need the help the most are the least able to access it. So I think SORTEE can or should be a place trying to help people get out of this loop of frustration as we develop friendships with people who have complementary skills and are motivated to help each other. Okay, another theme of this conference was that while we are seeing more organizations publicly endorsing open science principles, that doesn't necessarily change things in practice. And so we need to be able to evaluate what is working. Are some subfields more prone to bias than others? That's a question that I heard a lot. People were bringing up differences between research subfields and how that might change the effectiveness of open science practices or interventions, as well as these problems of inequitable access and ability to adhere to these changing standards. And those equity problems are going to be made worse if we don't also change the way that researchers are evaluated so heavily on their individual productivity. Another theme, collaborative data collection. So that was a theme both in theory and in practice. In theory, we discussed the absence of replication studies from many fields, but also how distributed collaborative research projects, they might help have more replication studies, they might make them more appealing, less work for each individual, but also have a higher impact overall. And in multiple sessions, I heard people bring up this recently pre-printed many analyst projects in ecology. This was a registered report. It has hundreds of authors, all these people contributing to it. But I want to highlight that the three equal first authors, Elliot, Hannah, and Tim, they're all founding SORTEE members. Tim is our founding president. Elliot's our founding secretary. All this is to say within SORTEE, we do have this capacity for really ambitious, long-term collaborative projects. On a smaller scale, in practice at this conference, we've had multiple hackathons where we started planning or collecting data for meta-science projects, evaluating the policies of journals and societies and the impacts of preprints. And in all those sessions, Hofstadter's law applies. It always takes longer than you expect, even when you take into account Hofstadter's law. I just had that in the session I hosted just before this conclusion. But these hackathons at the conference have made me more convinced than ever that it would be good to have more ongoing collaborative projects organized within SORTEE, not just for an hour or two at this annual conference. And so I'm going to use this opportunity to give yet another plug for our proposed membership engagement committee. So a few people have volunteered for this committee already. Thank you, but we could use more help, and we're yet to have a volunteer for the role of chair. So the committee can't exist without a chair. So please think whether that person could be you. You could be the chair. You don't need to have previously been a committee member to be an effective chair, and I'm more than happy to talk one-on-one with you over Zoom if you would like to before deciding whether to volunteer. If this committee does get up and running, it would restart SORTEE's Peer Code Review Club and keep track of those existing collaborative projects and facilitate new ones, and just in general, create more opportunities for SORTEE members to socialize both online and in person. But if community building is not your area of interest, no worries. There are plenty of other ways to help SORTEE, including, of course, organizing this annual virtual conference. So if you came to either of the board's unconference sessions, you would have heard a little about each of SORTEE's existing committees and what they do, as well as what it's like to be on a committee or on the board of directors. Now, if you are a SORTEE member, then you should have received an invitation to our annual members meeting, which is on the 8th of November. That's where we'll elect 3 new people to the board of directors, but don't worry if you can't make it on the day. The voting will be online and open for a week prior to that meeting. So there's still 1 week left to nominate yourself for the board. We've already had many people volunteer for SORTEE committees, which is fantastic, but very few people have nominated for the board so far. If this is because it's a bit scary to be in an election, then I want to remind you that you will receive a free SORTEE t-shirt as compensation for a bit of bravery. And again, I'll emphasize there is no need to have previously been a SORTEE member to nominate yourself now. So if you have time to devote to it, then joining a committee is obviously a really good way to connect with the SORTEE community. But even if you don't have time for that unpaid service work, there are still ways to stay connected with SORTEE members between now and next year's conference. So the Slack workspace that we've been using for this conference, it stays open for members to use. It's the free version of Slack though, so be aware that your messages will disappear after 90 days, but do keep sharing resources with each other in those various channels. You will also get an email from the conference organizers requesting feedback on this conference. Please do take the time to fill out that survey. We really do listen to members' feedback. For those of you who have attended conferences in previous years, you would have noticed big differences this year. We have this shorter, more condensed program. There's no parallel sessions, and the conference is also later in the year. And so those changes are all based on feedback we've received from members in previous years. If you've enjoyed the workshops at this conference, then keep an eye out for SORTEE's regular workshop and webinar series. After the break it's had for this conference, it'll be starting back up again with a webinar on publishing data in open access repositories, and that's on November 28th. And with the end of the year fast approaching, be aware that everyone's membership will expire on January 1st. So even if you just became a SORTEE member, your membership will expire at the end of this year. So everyone will receive a reminder email sometime early in the new year, encouraging you to renew your membership. One of the great joys of this conference for me has been seeing so many new SORTEE members, some people who only learned about SORTEE within the past week. So I really hope that all of you will stick around and see what we can do together next year. And with so many new people at this conference, it's clear that there's still so many people in the world who don't know about SORTEE yet. So do keep telling people in your community, in conversations and journal clubs, in conferences, in talks, keep telling people about SORTEE. So at this conference, we've reached 266 people from 36 different countries. So those are the countries that are shaded in green on the map. Darker shades of green show places where more people were registered from. It's really important to SORTEE that we are an international society. That's why this conference is held at every time of the day. And we could still use everyone's help to reach out to people in the parts of the world where we're less well represented. Okay. I'm nearly done, but I've got a few more thank yous to make. So I'll once again thank SORTEE's 2023 financial sponsors, as well as the fundraising committee for securing us these funds. Thank you to everyone who offered to help the conference committee run these events smoothly by monitoring the chat and Slack and sharing links and so on. Of course, many, many, many thanks to the facilitators of all the conference sessions for the time that they put into making those events engaging. Without these people volunteering their time, we just would not have had a conference at all. So many thanks to all the facilitators. And most of all, thank you to SORTEE's 2023 conference committee. What they achieved together and behind the scenes, also how they went about it, it's just been simply magnificent. I've seen a lot of committees. I don't think I've ever seen one function as well as this 2023 SORTEE Conference Committee has functioned. So on behalf of SORTEE, we are so lucky for your service. Thank you all. And that brings us to the end of SORTEE's third annual virtual conference. Whether this is your first time attending a SORTEE event or you've been here since the very first one, thank you for showing up and supporting open, reliable, and transparent science. This conference has really lifted my spirits, and hopefully it's also left you feeling more optimistic about the future of research and our research communities. So I hope to see you soon.